First time ever? You are not blessed yet. Don't lose faith. The day will come soon on unexpected time. And now, congratulations, the wait is over. You're about to be a mother. Prepare yourself for this new happy journey to know what really will happen inside your belly. After ejaculation, millions of sperms are floating through the vagina into the uterine cavity and then to the fallopian tube, searching for a released egg, waiting there for fertilization. To understand when really the journey begins, you are not officially pregnant yet. This is the first week of pregnancy when your last menstrual period is about to begin.
As estrogen and progesterone levels drop significantly at the end of the previous period, the uterus starts to shed its lining from the previous cycle. This will be your last period for at least the next 9 months. Because we don't know in which day exactly the fertilization process happens for each woman, doctors consider the first day of the last menstrual period is the first day of your pregnancy journey. The second week, the body prepares itself for the ovulation process. The hypothalamus is releasing gonadotropin-releasing hormone, GnRH, stimulating the pituitary gland to release FSH and LH hormones, which both prompt the ovary to release a mature egg into the fallopian tube. This mature egg is picked up by the fimbria of the fallopian tube and then travels through its lumen, waiting there for fertilization at the ampulla of the fallopian tube. This is actually the end of the second week since the start of your last period. If ejaculation occurred at this time, it will be a great chance to conceive. More than 300 million sperms will swim into the unfertilized egg, weighted there inside the fallopian tube. One lucky sperm will intercept the egg and burrows into its outer layer to fertilize it. The new fertilized egg is called a zygote that contains all the genetic information for your future baby. And now the real journey will begin, and you are officially pregnant. In week 3, within a couple of hours, the formed zygote starts to divide repetitively into a hollow ball of cells called the blastocyst. This blastocyst then travels from the fallopian tube into the uterus, preparing itself for implantation into the uterine cavity. But before implantation, it starts shedding its outer protective layer through a process called hatching. This hatching allows the outer layer cells of the blastocyst, the trophoblast, to directly contact and adhere into the endometrium. Now we are in week 4, when the blastocyst starts to implant into the uterine wall. This marks the official beginning of a pregnancy. A watertight sac forms around the blastocyst, gradually filling with fluid. This sac is called the amniotic sac, which helps cushion the growing embryo. The blastocyst undergoes the Great Divide, splitting into 2 bundles of cells. The inner bundle will form the embryo, while the outer bundle will burrow deep into the uterine wall to form the placenta. There's also another sac called the yolk sac, which is a critical temporary membranous sac, acts as the embryo's primary life support system before the placenta is fully formed and functional. In week 5, your baby is called an embryo and now is around 2 millimeters long, about the size of a sesame seed. What you're seeing now is the neural tube, which is considered the backbone of the fetal nervous system development. The neural plate folds on itself to form the neural tube, which will be fully closed at this week. This newly closed tube is transforming from a simple structure into a complex architecture to form the main parts of the central nervous system, the early brain, and the spinal cord. The circulatory and digestive systems are also taking shape little by little.
a primitive gut tube begins to form from the mouth to the tail of the embryo. This tube will form the stomach, intestines, liver, and pancreas. Also in this week, a primitive heart begins to form. This is a highly active period where the heart transforms from a simple cluster of cells into a contracting tube. The embryo grows rapidly and can no longer rely on simple diffusion for oxygen and nutrients, so that the cardiovascular system is becoming the first major organ system to function alongside with the development of the fetal nervous system. The embryo doesn't have hard bones yet, but the foundation for the entire skeletal system is rapidly forming. In week 6, the embryo undergoes rapid morphological changes, reshaping from a flat embryonic disc to a distinct 3D C-shaped cylinder. It's now about the size of a nail head or a sweet pea, measuring roughly from 2 to 5 millimeters from crown to rump. The head is differentiating into jaw, cheeks, and chin, which will eventually become one adorable face. Those little indentations on both sides of the head will later develop into earbuds. The primitive heart in this week undergoes a process called cardiac looping, which will begin to beat rhythmically with a rate ranges roughly from 90 to 110 beats per minute. This heart beating start pumping blood and usually showing as a flickering motion on the transvaginal ultrasound. The primitive nervous system undergoes rapid cephalic expansion and cellular differentiation, and the neural tube is actively fold-closing at this week. The embryo still doesn't have any true bone or even mature cartilage yet. Instead, the skeletal system is in a pre-cartilaginous phase, forming the structural models for future arm and leg bones. In week 7, the embryo is growing at an incredible rate, measuring about 7 to 10 millimeters long from crown to rump and weighs roughly about 1 gram, a size of a blueberry. The eyes look like distinct dark spots on the face. Tiny indentations appear on the face, known as the nasal pits, will later form the nostrils. The ears buds appear as tiny depressions on both sides of the face. The limb buds start to elongate and flatten at their tips into distinct paddle or flipper shapes, transforming from simple paddle-like protrusions into clearly regionalized appendages. Also in this week, the heart is completely formed and beating much faster than adults, with an average rate of 120 to 140 beat per minute. This is one of the most prominent signs of viability via a transvaginal ultrasound. The cerebral cortex of the brain can be seen now. This is due to the neurogenesis process rate is approximately 100,000 new cells per minute. The skeletal system now is entirely devoid of actual bone. However, through the chondrogenesis process, the primary ossification centers start to appear in long bones, marking the transition from the embryonic period toward fetal growth. In week 8, your baby is growing at an amazing rate. The arm buds are divided into hand, arm, and shoulder units. The leg buds have divided into thigh, leg, and foot units and extend to form knees and ankle joints. The head is in a more erect position, and the neck is more developed. The eyelids have almost covered the eyes, and the external ear is well advanced in form. Also, the head is bent forward onto the chest, the tip of the nose is visible, and the upper lip has formed. The gonads, whether our testes or ovaries, are starting to form. The heart is beating strongly at this week, on an average rate of 150 to 170 beats per minute, double the heart rate of an adult. The central nervous system expands rapidly, while the brain divides into 3 parts: forebrain, midbrain, and hindbrain. At the same time, the nerves begins to connect with newly forming muscles and organs. This skeletal system transforms from soft mesenchymal condensation and hyaline cartilage models to the onset of primary ossification. This is the true beginning of bone formation. In week 9, the head has straightened out and more fully developed. The ears are continuing to grow, making the embryo look more human. Your baby is only an embryo for 1 more week and is already developing into a fetus. The outer ear structures continue to take a shape. The eyes move closer to the center of the face. The eyelids fuse shut. The nostrils become defined and the tip of the nose is now visible in the profile view. The limbs have grown longer and more in proportion with the rest of the body. The fingers and tiny toes are visibly separate and well-defined. For the first time, using ultrasound, a spontaneous fetal movements can be detected in this week, such as twitching or moving its tiny arms and legs. However, you cannot feel these movements yet. The embryo is still too small and the uterus is cushioned against the abdominal wall. In week 10, your baby is officially graduated from embryo to fetus. The head is still large, making up about half of the body's total length. Your fetus weighs roughly 4 to 5 grams and approximately 4.5 centimeters long, a size of strawberry. A temporary physiological mid-gut herniation occurs normally in this week as the fetal bowel grows too fast for the tiny belly and moves into the base of the umbilical cord. The eyes have migrated from the sides of the head to a more anterior position. The eyelids have grown and fused shut to protect the developing retinas and won't reopen until approximately week 26 to 28. The heart is now fully functional with 4 chambers. The 2 ventricles pump the blood to the lungs and the whole body, while the 2 atria receive the return blood from baby circulation. The brain is developing faster than any other part of the body, causing the head to comprise roughly half of the fetus's entire crown rump length. The skeletal system is now under a major transition from a soft, flexible framework into the early stages of actual bone. This is due to the endochondral ossification process starts in earnest, where the cartilage model begins to harden and calcify into bone. In week 11, the head has some distinctly human features, with ears nearly in their final shape, open nasal passages on the tip of the tiny nose, and tooth buds for all 20 primary teeth are forming in the gums. The torso is starting to lengthen out to better match that disproportionately large head. Fingernail and toenail beds are developing, and nails will actually start forming within the next few weeks. Behind those little lips, your fetus is practicing yawning, swallowing, and chewing processes, prepping for hours of eating and chatting in years to come. In week 12, the lungs are completely formed. The thyroid starts to work on its own. The kidneys now produce urine, which is released into the amniotic fluid. The intestines move from the umbilical cord back into the abdomen, and the liver and pancreas begin producing bile and insulin. The pituitary gland has started producing hormones. The primary ossification centers in the skull and long bones become increasingly distinct, making the skeletal frame clearly visible on radiological imaging. At this time, the first trimester has been ended. The fetus prepares himself for the second stage of the journey with more and more development. Thanks for watching this video to the end. Don't forget to follow us to know what's really happening in the second trimester in details. Tell us in the comments which week you are in now.